Well, hi everyone. I'm John Deary, and welcome to our video legal podcast. We have a very enjoyable, I think you will find out, dealing with labor and employment areas of the law, and a person that has been a close personal friend of mine for many, many years, and is an outstanding attorney with the law firm of Archer, Byington, Glennon, and Levine, which is located out in Long Island. And I'm delighted to welcome Marty Glennon. So glad you're here.
I'm
and
delighted to be here, John. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Well, let me ask you this, because you have a very interesting and kind of specialized area. Why don't you tell us what is the general scope of the work that you guys do?
Yeah, so our firm, our whole practice came out of a bigger firm. I think you knew Jack English.
Yep, sure.
It was Myers Swazi English and Klein at the time. And we developed our own labor practice. And we kind of went out on our own, opened up a Suffolk office at one point, our whole practice. And we focus on labor and employment and employee benefits. So we represent a lot of unions, a lot of trade unions, and their fringe benefit funds.
Such as when you talk about benefits that unions, no one has to, my dad was a 45-year plumber union guy so I can remember going down as a kid to many events and so forth. So I am deeply committed to the whole union work. Tell me, what kind of benefits are you working with in terms of the unions?
Yeah, so a lot of in the building trades mostly, you have the pensions, the annuities, the health care, which is a big one these days, and then they have some supplemental plans. They have an apprenticeship plan as well. Some of them have the education and cultural. My union, I came out of Local 3. I was an electrician before practicing law, and their education and cultural fund paid for my undergrad and law degree. So it's pretty good. And then in terms of those benefits, those are Taft-Hartley funds on the building trade side, where they're jointly managed by employers and union representatives. So, and the issue for them is the best interests of the beneficiaries and the participants of the plan. There's no self-dealing, there's nothing like that. So they want to guarantee the best returns on investment. You're not always going to hit a home run, right? But it's important that they diversify their funds, and the Department of Labor and the IRS oversees how they're managed.
Now, there's an important program that you have advised me of, and I think it's really important since it impacts so much of the people that would be viewers of our show, and that is the program of ERISA. So let's talk about that in some detail.
Yeah, so that's what I was alluding to. So ERISA came about in 1974. It's really the fallout of the Studebaker Automobile Pension Fund. People thought they had a pension when they were going to retire, and it was poorly managed, and there were no regulations really at the time to say, what you had to do as a trustee, as a fiduciary for those investments, or even as a recipient, a participant, what your rights were. So in 1974, President Ford signed into law was the ERISA. And what it does, it governs all these plans that I just discussed, right? So they regulate them. They regulate the trustees on those plans. As I said, you have the union and management trustees, and they provide transparency for the recipients of those benefits. So, let's take a health plan, for instance. There's a summary plan description. It says, this is what you get for your benefit, right? And then if there's any material modifications, they're called SMMs, substantial material modifications, and the members have to get notice of that, right? So if something changes in their plan, they should be made aware of it. And then the third part of it is, if you feel you've been wronged, you get the right to appeal to the trustees on a benefit if you feel like you owed a benefit you didn't get. And even after that, if on that appeal process, if you're not denied, you can go to federal court and sue the trustees to get the benefit that you think you deserve.
Well, you keep using the word benefit, and I think we all understand it, but can you be more specific in terms of what are the kinds of benefits that are under ERISA?
So let's look at a pension benefit, right? Okay. And since I do predominantly in the building trades, we have a lot of defined benefit pension plans, right? A defined benefit is you have at the end, when you retire, you have a fixed benefit. You know what that benefit's going to be, and so much money goes in your name into a general fund. It's not in your name, I shouldn't say that, but it's made on your behalf, and that you're guaranteed a certain benefit at the end. So some of them, to make it easy, right? You would get, let's say, $100 for every year worked. So if you work 10 years, you get $1,000 a month. If you work 20 years, you get 2,000 or 3,000, and so on and so forth, right? That's a defined benefit plan. It's defined what the benefit's going to be when you leave. You know it up front. A defined contribution, which a lot of funds have now too, is more of like a 401k, which people are familiar with, right? That's your money going into a plan. It's your own money. In a lot of cases, it's tax deferred, but you have options where the employer can match that benefit as well. And the same thing, the trustees of that plan have to provide you with the knowledge of what's in that plan, how it's financially doing, what the requirements are to obtain the benefit, so on and so forth. So especially with a defined benefit, there's a vesting period, right? So you don't get a pension right away. And in some cases, you have to work a certain period of time, whether it's 5 years, 3 years, whatever it is, and then you're vested. And after you're vested, you get that benefit. And then for every year, it accumulates, right? So whatever that multiplier is, you multiply that by the additional year of service.
What are the challenges to staying with a pension? What are the challenges as impacted by the individual employee?
Oh, yeah. So in terms of an employee, that's a good question, John. I think part of the problem that we have today, they're looking to open up what investments can be made under ERISA, right? And one of them being Bitcoin, right? These hard-to-value assets. I sit on a bunch of funds where they're very well diversified, right? You have small cap, large cap, medium cap, international funds, a whole universe of investments that trustees manage your money, right? And they usually have a threshold on which they want to get a return each year on that investment. So if the fund has $1 million or $10 million, they're shooting hundreds of millions. I mean, I have funds with $1 billion in the pension, right? It's been around long enough. And generally what they shoot for is somewhere about a 7% return on their investment each year. Now that's going to go up and down and up and down. And each fund has a series of consultants and investment and money managers and everybody else. So when you go into these trustees meetings, all these professionals come in to explain the different investments, the different money managers. You have the large cap, you have the small cap, and those are diversified. So the other key component of that is because if you and I are a trustee, we have a friend that's doing business down the road and he says, hey, invest in my stock. ERISA prevents you from doing that, right? It says you have to act in the best interest of the beneficiary and the participant. So these investment professionals come in, tell the trustees, hey, these are good investments. This is here's the track record. For the last 10 years, it's been getting double-digit returns. And what they do is they monitor it on a monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. If they start to slip, they may suggest pulling out and putting it somewhere else. But you want to have a diversified investment, right? You're going to want monies in the treasuries as well, because once the market goes up, the treasuries stay low. The market comes down, treasuries go up. So you diversify it as much as possible. So this way, when the market takes a big hit, you reduce the amount of loss you're going to have. When it goes up, you're going to go up with it. So,
who are basically the investors and what is their background?
Well, it's the trustees. It's the trustees. So, funny.
Who appoints those trustees?
So for the union appoints the trustees, and generally they're working class men and women that, let's take any trade, carpenters, electricians, plumbers. They would generally have worked in the field, and they come out, and if you're the business manager, you say, Marty, you have a law degree, or you seem like you might be pretty well suited here. There's training that they can get. One of the big ones is the International Foundation, where you get certifications. And you learn this stuff over time. And I always said to some new guy that sits on as a trustee, how are you balancing your own checkbook? You're in charge of $1 billion now, right? And it's the same thing on the employer side. But at least on the employer side, they have a business sense of somewhat, right? So both union and employer trustees rely heavily on their advisors.
What is the advantage to the employer of having an ERISA program?
Because you're going to get better skilled employees, right? So
ERISA is an attraction to the employees
Well,
to bring you into a
it's
business.
not the ERISA itself; it's the plan itself. It's the benefits, right?
Yep.
So if you have the opportunity to work in a non-union environment where the employer may only pay you in cash, or for a salary, that's it. You have no retirement security. You're not sure. You may be paying for your own health care. There's a lot of ifs in that environment. In a union environment, you have a collectively bargained agreement that says these are our benefits and here's what it costs, right? So if you're a big contractor, especially in New York City, you want to build a skyscraper, you can't go down the corner and put an ad in the paper and hire 40 laborers in a day. You can go to a union hall and say, hey, I need 40 guys tomorrow, and they can accommodate you. So there's the benefit. The bigger contractors want to be in that environment, and they're offering benefits that are competitive to get the most talented people there.
Are all employers covered under an ERISA?
No, not all employers. You don't have to, under ERISA, you do not have to provide any benefits, right? Okay. But if you do, and if there's certain qualifications and time strains and investments or vesting, that's when ERISA kicks in. It's not like it's not a clearly defined term. It's as the Supreme Court said in pornography, you know it when you see it.
Yep.
So you can say, oh, this isn't an ERISA plan, and it could very well be an ERISA plan, which is going to be open to interpretation. But at the end of the day, the whole purpose of ERISA is the oversight of the government to make sure that the trustees that are managing your money and telling you that you're getting health benefits, an annuity, and a pension, that's going to be there for you, right? They even have what's called the PBGC, the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corp, right? Where if pensions fail, they come in and bail out the pensions somewhat to guarantee the retirees that they're still going to have some form of pension. Under the Biden administration, you had the Butch-Lewis Act, which bailed out a lot of failing pensions and guaranteed these members in unions and otherwise that they were going to have their pensions secured when they got ready for retirement.
How much of an impact is there given the administration on a federal level, such as we talk about Biden and Trump? So you've got two different, obviously, political sides. Do they have any impact on the ERISA program?
So, and again, I want to clarify, ERISA is not the program, that's the law. It oversees.
I understand.
He oversees these various types of benefits. It kind of moves very slowly. I've had a couple of my partners sat on the ERISA advisory board at the DOL. So anytime you want to make changes or substantial changes, there's an advisory board, there's public hearing, rulemaking, you got to go in there and say, and then, it intentionally is a slow process because you don't want to be knee-jerk on making some of these significant changes, especially when employers and participants have an expectation at a certain level. When things start to fail, that's when things will speed up, right? Like the Butch-Lewis Act, the Pension Protection Act. They see every now and then we got to tweak something because there's still pensions that are falling through the cracks.
Does ERISA promote transparency?
Yeah. So that's the whole thing is under the statute, the trustees and the plan have to inform the members of what their benefits are. Those summary plan descriptions, it's a little booklet and it'll tell you what you get in your health benefits or your pension benefits or your annuity and what you need to invest. And it also tells you if you feel you're being denied a benefit, you have the right to appeal. And if you lose the appeal, you have the right to sue. So that's the transparency component that it requires the trustees and the plan to make sure the participants are informed of the benefits that they're supposed to get.
Do employees actually review and see whether, in fact, whatever the benefits are, do they look carefully at it or do they just sort of flip into it?
It kind of depends on the individual. So let's just say, for example, I'm a laborer. And I've been working for 15 years, right? And maybe I'm 40 years old. I get hurt on the job, right?
Okay.
Now I'm going to go out on disability and everything else. I want to know what my benefit is. And Social Security is going to want to know what type of benefit I'm getting as well. So they're going to do a calculation at that time. And then, is there a supplemental benefit for disability pension, right? So sometimes if you get hurt while you're on the job in the field, you'll get an additional kick of a disability pension on top of it to make sure that you're protected and secure in retirement. So that individual, answer your question, would be more inclined to know what those benefits are than somebody that works every day for 40-something years who knows he's getting a pension number on 40 years. He pretty much has, or he or she has an idea what that number is going to be.
What percentage of employees are covered by ERISA? Roughly.
Well, that I don't have an answer for because I don't even know how many plans are covered under ERISA. But I would tell you that in the private sector, unions are less than 10%. You know, in New York City, it's a little bit higher. So for around the country, an employer, you don't have to be in a union to have a benefit that's governed by ERISA, right? Some of the big single, I deal with multi-employer plans. There are single employer plans where, you know, something like Macy's or somebody can provide certain benefits. Those plans are also going to be covered under ERISA, and it's going to have the same rules that it has to follow.
And what do you, in terms of providing a legal practice to these unions and employees, what work do you do?
So I have a couple of partners. Like I said, one of mine was on the ERISA advisory board. He came out of the Employee Benefit Securities Office in Washington, D.C., the USDOL. So he used to oversee all this. He was the enforcer. So if somebody said there was something wrong with one of the plans, they would go in, they would do an audit. Or if something looked awry, they would go in and do an audit. That's what my partner Gary Thayer would do. I, on the other hand, I do more the labor side of it. So I do a lot of collection work for the funds. So although the employers are members of the participating employers in the fund, not all of them are able to pay at all times, right? So under ERISA, there's an obligation that they have to pay. Those are money set aside for the employees.
Who has to pay?
The employer.
The employer.
Under the collective bargaining agreement, they're required to pay so much per hour. Think of it this way. Simplest terms are, you get $100 an hour, right? That could be in cash, and that's all you get. You don't have health benefits, you don't have pension. That's up to you to do with your money what you will. In the context of the world that I'm in the union context, that $100 is divvied up. You might get $50 in wages, and then the other 50 goes into pension, welfare, and annuity, right? So you reap that benefit, although you're really not paying for it.
What are employees mostly interested in terms of the benefits that they receive, would you say?
This day and age, it's health benefits, right? The cost is astronomical. I was talking with one of my clients on the funds, on the welfare fund alone. If they're out and they're no longer a participant or a beneficiary in the plan, and there's a qualifying event, they would have to pay COBRA, which is a continuing of your own benefit. The COBRA for this particular fund is $2,500 a month for a family.
Okay.
$2,500 a month. So if you're out of work and you have a break in service, meaning you don't have anybody contributing on your behalf anymore, you can keep your welfare, your health benefit, but you're going to have to pay $2,500 a month. That's a heavy lift. And for this particular plan, that's not just medical and emergency, it's dental and optical as well.
Are any plans excluded from ERISA?
Yeah, there's, well, government plans are excluded, church plans are excluded. You know, there's a separation of church and state. There are other plans that are excluded that don't fall under ERISA, but in most cases they're regulated by other laws. I can tell you, like New York State has its own trust funds, right? Trust law, trust in the states. So it would be regulated on the state level. at some level, it's going to be regulated. ERISA is the universal one, right? It's federal. It's a federal law that covers all the benefit plans that fall under ERISA.
Do you deal with anything such as minimum wage?
We do. It's very rare that I get that anymore. You know, we used to see a lot more of it, and generally, if an employee feels that they're not getting the wages that they're not entitled to, I would refer them to the Department of Labor.
Okay.
Because they'll do it for free. There are other attorneys that'll charge you and take a percentage of what you get back. The way I look at it, you already lost money. Why are you going to give me more money when the Department of Labor will do it for nothing?
Are any of these employees entitled, like, say, for example, to overtime pay?
Sure, sure. I mean,
Is that part of the program?
no. So, like I said, it's separate and distinct. You have your paycheck in the context of my world, and when we're talking about ERISA benefits, one side of it's just all benefits, right? You don't even see that money. That's that's put in on your behalf. The other side are your wages. That's what you're most concerned with, right? The monies that taken out for the benefits go directly to the funds. You'll be notified by the fund if benefits are being paid on your behalf, right? So if I've been working for weeks, I assume if I'm getting my paycheck, the benefits are being paid too. Sometimes they don't. And what happens is an employer falls behind and they try to hold off on the money. That's a violation of ERISA because that's trust money. That is set aside for the employee. They can't commingle those funds in any way, but some of them do. And there's strict penalties. So if you don't pay the benefits that are owed, not only do you owe the delinquency, you have to pay interest on that delinquency, somewhere around 9%. Liquidated damages up to 20%, and the attorney's fees, my attorney's fees for going after you to collect that money. So there's a heavy, and then there's another, I think I said it, liquidated damages are 20%. So there's a strong incentive to comply, and there's very few defenses once I bring those lawsuits.
Can employers pay less if an employee is getting tips?
Well, you're talking about a different area of the law now. That's
Okay.
more in terms of, restaurant workers and stuff like that. There's a different formula
Okay.
on the different minimum wages as well.
What laws govern, in fact, wages and hours?
You have the Fair Labor Standards Act on the federal level, and then you have various laws on the New York State level. So depending on where you work, in terms of construction, if you do public work, there's enforcements in New York City, the New York City Comptroller. And on the state, it's with the Department of Labor. You have to pay what's called the prevailing wage. That's a guarantee no matter what it is. You don't have to be union. You could be a non-union contractor, but if you get public work and say you're an electrician, there's a schedule that's set for what those wages and benefits are. You don't even have to pay the benefits, but you have to pay the equivalent of the benefits in wages or some other form
You
of
mentioned
benefit.
about Local 3, which is the electricians union, and I might say, based on my own years of experience in Albany, probably the most important and significant union. Are there benefits that they pay, generally speaking, since they are such a significant and large union, more than the average other union?
Well, I gave you an example up in the beginning. They are a unique union in terms of, you probably knew Harry Van Arsdale,
Very
right?
well.
Harry Van Arsdale was a pioneer of his time in the labor movement. He was the one that said, we want to establish an education and cultural fund. And they said, well, we already give you training as an apprentice. That wasn't enough for Harry. He wanted the apprentices to get an associate's degree as well, because he thought there was more value to a contractor, that not just getting an electrician, but getting an educated electrician. And then they doing the additional benefit, if you continued to go to school and matriculated, they would pay up to this was going back 30 years ago, up to an additional $20,000 for members and $15,000 for their spouses. So, I could tell you a lot of them didn't take advantage of it. I think I'm the only one that got a law degree out of there from it, and now they're one of my clients. But yeah, different industries may have different types of benefits. There's all different there's a sliding scale of benefits. Some of them can provide a supplemental benefit on the pensions or the annuities or the welfare. Like I said, you can have retiree health benefits.
Okay.
And those that have them now, the trustees are exploring them because retirees are living a lot longer and it's taking from the fund.
Does wrongful discharge play in here?
Not so much. I mean, I would handle wrongful discharge. I'll back up. In terms of ERISA, if, let's just say, you're a company where you have a 3-year vesting rule, meaning you have to work 3 years before you can vest in that pension. Once you vest, you get that 3 years and every year after, right? Yeah, if there's a history of the employer terminating everybody right before they vest, that's a violation under ERISA, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not always clear cut, but you can bring a case against ERISA for retaliating against an employee for looking to be into the plan. Other wrongful discharges, I do a lot of union side work. So under a collective bargaining agreement, there's provisions in there that say you can only fire employees for just cause. Mm-hmm. And generally those go to arbitration, which I handle a lot of those as well.
What protection exists for discrimination?
Well, you have that both on city, state, local, and federal levels, right? There's plenty of discrimination laws. You can terminate anybody except for on the basis of sex, religion, in New York City, sexual orientation, age, disability. So I get a lot of calls. I can probably get 2 or 3 calls every week. Somebody got terminated and their boss was harassing them. Most people are an employee at will, right? So you can get fired for any reason as long as it's not a discriminatory reason. People don't like to hear that, but that's the world. Unless you protected by some sort of employment contract or a collective bargaining agreement, that's the way the world works.
Generally, what is an employee's rights to a safe workplace?
That's governed also by the Department of Labor, and in New York State we have the Department of Labor. PESH is what overlooks the safety. So it's OSHA on the federal level, PESH on the state level. So like take asbestos, for instance, right? In the 70s, the World Trade Center was all sprayed with asbestos. And you're familiar with the asbestos litigation,
Very much
right?
so. Yep.
And so OSHA would go in there today. If you were going to renovate a building and there was asbestos in there and the employer just says, take that out, well, there's regulations on there that would prevent that. You have to have the proper gear and everything else. So that's one of the safety precautions. And the other one you would be more familiar with, was it 240 of the labor law?
Yeah.
Scaffolding.
Sure.
So, right. So there's strict liability on employers for not providing proper safety gear.
What notice is required for mass layoffs?
That's a WARN Act. It's the, can't think of what it is, but there's threshold numbers in terms how many employees that they're employed. I think it's 25. I could be wrong on that. But if you have a mass layoff, you have to give them notice in advance, and then you have to provide some, sit down with them. And in a union context, generally what we do is negotiate retraining and repositioning and some sort of exit strategies.
Are lie detector tests allowed?
No. No, not unless it's in a federal agency, you know, and sensitive. But general employment, no.
What rights does someone have, if any? Do they get any more benefits if they've served in the military?
Do they get more benefits?
Yeah.
No, I think what they, in some of the hiring preferences, they get additional points in terms of what a grading system would be. So if you were in the military, you might get an additional 10 points. You get a leg up.
What leave would an employee be entitled to?
Well, we just expanded it. It used to be unpaid family medical leave. Now we have paid leave in New York City. You have family medical leave on the federal level. So there's ways you can get intermittent leave. You don't have to take 12 weeks in one block. You can take it every Friday for that period of time. So there's different protections. You know, we've come a long way in recognizing, you know, people have health issues. They have family members that have health issues, and it's not worth. And if you're an employer, if you think about it, John, you've had somebody that you spent money on training and provides a service to you. Why would you want to get rid of them? Isn't it better to help that individual get through those tough times, and then there's the sense of loyalty that comes back? So, occasionally the government's got to step in and say, we're going to protect them as well. Make sure you do that.
In your relationship between essentially between the employers and the union employees, is this a challenging role for you to play as a union, as an attorney, or is it a kind of harmonious program?
I'd like to give you a good rosy picture on this, John, but I saw a real change after COVID, and
In what way?
I think I'll give you two examples. The first one, I assumed when COVID hit, we shut down New York City and the world, that we were going to be booming with business, right? There were going to be a lot of health and safety issues. People were going to be forcing their employees to work. And unbeknownst to me and probably anybody else, it was just the opposite. The employers would bend over backwards to have their employees come in. So that we had less work during that period of time instead of more. But the flip side of that now, people got used to staying at home. The demands are higher than what they were, right? Nobody wants to come back to work in the office on any level. They get a taste of the good life, and that's what they want. The other problem that I see is the proliferation of cell phones, right? And information wars. I tell a story all the time. I have, whether it's doing an arbitration or contract negotiations, I usually have a member come up with their phone telling me what the law is.
Okay.
And I'm not going to argue with them. I just tell them, if I don't need to be here. If you know it, I'll leave. And the leadership generally gets it. It's the members that aren't experienced in those, and I'm not knocking them, that they just don't have the experience. I'll give you one good example where I even had the president next to me telling me to object. Well, direct examination is going on the employer's witness. I'm like, calm down. And he keeps insisting that I object. I don't. And so he's screaming. I go, all right, I object. And the arbitrator just looks at me and looks at him. He says, tell your co-counsel he's overruled.
Oh, okay.
And then when I do the cross-examination, I finish, he says, oh, now I know what you were doing, right? So I get it. People don't understand. And the problem is when you think you have information, you only have a piece of the information. What was it that Ben Franklin, I think it was Ben Franklin says, a little bit of information is a dangerous thing, something to that effect. So that's what happens. They get a little bit of information. They think they have all the information. And there's a lot of strategy that's involved, right? And relationships. In our field, John, how much of it's built on relationships and trust, even with our adversaries? All my adversaries know if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. Good or bad.
When you say your adversaries, who are your adversaries?
So I represent the unions, right? I represent the benefit funds. So the benefit funds, I represent the funds. That's the employer and union trustees. There's no employer or union. But on the unions, on the labor side of the practice, I represent unions and the members. And so on the other side would be the employer and their counsel, right? It's a small world in which I deal. I know most of the attorneys on both sides of the aisle at this point. And at the end of the day, I've been doing this for 30 years. I can't even believe I'm saying that. But, your reputation precedes you after a while. They know you're a straight shooter. You're not going to try and pull a fast one. I mean, I've had attorneys that tried that years ago with me. And to this day, I won't give them a 5-minute adjournment.
Do you have more direct contact with the employers or with the unions?
Mostly I deal with the union side. On the labor relations side, I deal with the union. But I have relationships with the employer, and that's the key too, right?
Do you have, I don't want to say significant, I mean, do you have much contact with the employer representatives?
Well, I have contact with them on the benefit fund side, at the trustees meetings, and on the employer side, so I'll give you an example. I represent all the employees at the New York Racing Association, Aqueduct, Saratoga, and Belmont, right? I know the in-house counsel there, so the employer knows me. I know all the leadership at NYRA. They know what they're going to get when they come into an arbitration, and I'm going to cross-examine them. So that all that factors into the other side too. They know they're not going to pull one over on you, right? They know that it's going to be a fight, and they got to think about it. Is the fight worth the fight at that point?
Well, it's very clear that you've got an unbelievable handle on this general area.
I pulled that off, huh?
Well, no, that you've done very easily and very well. And it just seems to me that a lot of individuals that are either looking at beginning a career or looking at establishing relationships with with an employer, so much of this stuff is very, very critical to them.
Yeah.
And
I think it's going to be difficult. A lot of kids come to me now thinking about law school, and I'm not sure there's a good return on that investment anymore with artificial intelligence. I think that you're going to see a condensing, especially in the areas of trust and estates, matrimonial, real estate. A lot of that's going to be form driven, where you're going to put into AI, which even if you wanted to get a divorce and you want to save money, you put in all your assets, how long you've been together, where you live, blah, 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 and it'll draft a divorce agreement for you, right? You want to leave money in your estate, it'll do trusts for you, wills and everything else. So I think, I'm at the finish line. I think I'm going to get by on it, but I feel bad for these kids coming up that are going to have to compete with this.
in other words, you're saying that someone looking to get into your business as a successor to you, you're saying that world could be narrowing.
I think what's going to happen is, I just rattled off 3 different areas. Those people that have probably been doing it 10 to 20 years now want to do another 20 years or 30 years, they're going to have to redirect, right? So every area of law is going to start getting concentrated with more and more attorneys. I think there's going to be a flooded market and not as many opportunities. I see it now. I mean, when we interview kids, they're out for a year, 2 years out of law school. This is the first time, I just heard it in the New York Times, that college graduates have a higher unemployment than college educated.
That's really hard to comprehend.
That is.
And very worrisome. You talk about changing the world.
And think about the return on investment, right? You spent all that money going to college, and today it's probably close to $500,000 at a really good college. And you have student debt with the interest building up on that.
Marty, you've given us a lot to think about and a lot of good information. Thank you so much.
I just do it to come see you, John.
It's a pleasure. Great to see you, Marty.
You too, brother.
Take care now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.